Now, Lynda, before the break, we spoke about issues and challenges regarding retirement in South Africa. But something we didn't mention is the role of companies. Now, what do you think companies, what roles should they be playing in the retirement planning and future planning of their employees?
I think it's a question I ask many HR specialists is, what programs do you have from a wellness perspective within your companies for your 50+ employees? It's something, and in many cases, sadly, they do not have too many. And so that for me is one of the areas where I really am hoping to bring about recognition and change for HR practitioners, is that it's an important phase to help the 50+ employees to understand and be inspired about their world beyond their world of work where they are presently, because many fear that place. And so they're hanging on in many cases because of policy and procedure, or because they need the money. But much of who they are is often tied up around that job, their status, their money, their socialization, their utility of how useful they feel. And many of them fear what will happen to them, because baby boomers, for many of us, many of us have been workaholics. And so a large portion of a baby boomer's life has been spent in their workplace, and they fear what the other side might look like. Even though they long for that, there are many of them that fear that.
Now, we just spoke about a generation within a company, of course, the baby boomers. Should companies be focusing on generational theories in terms of trying to understand the dynamics of their various personnel or staff?
There are two dynamics. The one is that baby boomers, again, were in the workplace for a long period of time, so hold on to a lot of wisdom and knowledge. And many companies are also struggling as these baby boomers leave, that wisdom is very often not easy to put into a training manual or to transfer to the younger employees. So looking at a whole range of different ways in which people could exit, coming back in a phased retirement, or job shadowing. So there's those kind of things. For the younger generation, many of them are starting to get irritated by the baby boomer in the workplace, because they feel like they're holding on to a job and taking too long to get out of the way. And so there is a lot of miscommunication and misunderstanding between the different generations in the workplace. Because technology is driving the pace of change, boomers, we grew up in an era where computers were the size of houses. And so it's difficult for us boomers to keep up with technology at the rate which is normal for X and Y generation. And so those are some of the challenges that are starting to become evident in the world of work from a generational point of view.
How do you bridge that generational gap, let's say, with the world of technology and IT and the internet and everything associated with that?
You're talking about it for a business, or for me personally, how am I helping boomers?
The boomers who usually struggle with this.
For me, I really encourage them to either go get their children to teach them, but if not, to find some other boomer who's doing something and to really challenge them to learn that as a skill, because the world is changing and it is going to be necessary if they want to stay part of that world. I often get phone calls after interviews where many people phone me looking for work. And when I say to them, look, I'm not a recruitment agency, but I'm more there to help and guide people to understand what the world of work could look like so that you can design your future. I say to them, you can receive my free newsletter online, and they will tell me they don't have an email address. And so in becoming so technologically irrelevant, you're cutting yourself off from a 21st century world. And so I really do encourage them to learn and to develop new skills around that.
Right, and now let's take a step back. Before you delved into the world of retirement coaching, you ran a business called Education School Supplies. You were also instrumental in growing the My School program throughout South Africa. Now, where does your passion for education come from?
I think my passion came from the day my children were born. I completely reversed the picture in my brain of the businesswoman I wanted to be. The maternal instinct kicked in so strongly that I basically tried every avenue until I found work that fitted with my children. And so when my children were little, I was involved in an early childhood education business, and that became something that I became really interested in understanding the first 7 years of life, how important those 7 years of life, and actually that parents are the primary educator in the first 5 years. And one of the things that I'm really challenging people nowadays is that we've lost responsibility in life. We send our children to school to be educated. We go to the doctor to get well, rather than taking responsibility ourselves for those things. And so I took early responsibility for my own children's education, and then became passionate about helping other parents. Educational School Supplies was then the result of, I started an education business, and then 7 or 8 years later sold that, and was very privileged to join Smile Education right at the beginning, when it became a really brilliant business for parents and schools in South Africa in the early 90s.
You spoke about responsibility. Are parents, in your opinion, placing enough emphasis and giving their children enough support in terms of the value of a good education?
We're now talking about the X and Y, or the X and very young Y generation parent. They are a completely different breed. They are actually hovering over their children intensely. In fact, they possibly are the most involved parent generation that the world has ever seen. Graham Codrington and a very good friend of mine, Nikki Bush, have just brought out a book called How to Future-Proof Your Child. And I was instrumental in helping both Graham and Nikki in guiding them through my own experiences over that period. And so parenting a 21st century child is a challenging place, because the world is growing at a tsunami of change. And so that is a brilliant book in helping parents understand the change and making sure that their children have a really good, solid moral and solid foundation on which to base decisions that are going to come flying at them that the world has never seen.